Yoma Daf Mem Zayin. Today's email comes from Avram Aberbach. He says, "Dear Belly, just want to let you know that I really enjoy watching your Daf shir. I joined you almost at the beginning of COVID on YouTube, and you're still going strong. Yasher Koyach. I'm no novice at the Daf either. At the end of Seder Moed, I'll Be'ezer Hashem be completing my 5th cycle. You keep mentioning that from a kasha startmanish, you don't die from a question. I have a raya as we can yosh starben from a kasha. He has a raya that he could die from a question. Rashi tells us that each of the Shiftei Kam married a twin sister of one of his brothers, and yet when they came down to Mitzrayim, there were only 70 souls. So what does Rashi do? He kills off 11 Yiddish Tachter, 11 Yiddish women, girls, daughters, because he has the kasha of what happened to them. Isn't this a perfect proof that Ken Yosh Darben from a kasha? And listen to this unbelievable answer he has. The proof has an upshlag. If you were born because of a question, because Rashi had a question, who did the Shiftei Kam marry? Then somebody who was born from a question could die from a question. Your Talmud Avram Aberbach, Yasher Koyach, beautiful. Yoma Daf Mem Zayin, we're starting a brand new parak Hoitziu Lo Kaf. Talking about the Kohen Gadol, and they give the Kohen Gadol a spoon, which is empty from the Lishkas HaKelim, and they give him a machta, a shovel full of k'tayres from the Lishkas Beis Avtinas. He takes Meloi Chafna with his 2 hands like this of k'tayres, depending on the size of his hand, and he takes the k'tayres and he puts it inside the spoon. Now, he has to take both the spoon and the gechalim together, because he's not allowed to take 2 trips. But what about taking the shovelful of the coals and putting it on top? That's also not good, because how is he going to remove it? His hands are full of k'tayres. He doesn't have an extra hand to take off the gechalim. He's going to have to use his mouth. That's not something that you do in front of Melech Malchei Amlachim. You don't do it in front of a regular king, certainly not in front of Hashem. And what we do is like the Nasim, kaf achas melei k'tayres. Says the Mishnah, the k'tayres is in his left hand. The gechal and the coals are in the right hand. Ask the Gemara, Yitziva ba'ara, U'yoyer b'shmei shmaya, famous line. You're taking what's important, the k'tayres, and putting in the left hand. It doesn't make sense. You're taking the ger, the guest, and you're putting him up on top, and the person that lives there, you're putting him on the below. The kids, the k'tayres. Says the Gemara, because the coals are very heavy, so you need the right hand to carry it. Even if it's a kohen who could carry a lot more, like plug, like the Gemara says, there's a bais with Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimches. He's a kohen gadol who's able to do chafino with a 4 kav, and he said, "You know who I am? All the women zered zardu v'zered ima ala lagag. My mother's zered went up to the roof." In other words, one shot is Kimches's mother ate zered, like a certain cereal, when she was pregnant, and therefore he came out so special with huge hands. He's a huge person. Or the zera, his zera was the better zera, and that's why he's a better person. As the Rav Melech said, "Batazreini chayil v'chama ziratani." In other words, you picked me, you chose me. I'm the better one. And because of that, Zerastani, you gave me koyach. There are a few more stories the Gemara says on Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimches. Twice, the Gemara says, 2 different times, he went out of the Beis HaMikdash, I am Kippur. One time to speak to an Arab, one time to speak to a certain general. It was in the shuk. And when they spoke to him, they spit on him. And the spittle is like a zav. So they had to remove him from the Kohen Gadol, and his brothers took over. And the Gemara says, Nimsa Rasa Imam Shnei Kohanim Gadol B'Yom Echad. It came out that Ayim Kippur, she saw 2 of her sons being mishamish as the Kohen Gadol on that day. And they asked her, the Chacham, how is it possible that you have 7 sons that all became Kohanim Gadol? And she said, it's because the famous line, the walls of my house, even though I'm allowed to go without head covering, but I always covered my hair when it's possible. And they told her that's not the reason. Many have done that and they didn't have sons that were Kohanim Gadol. It's usher to make a kli for the size of the kmitza. You have to do it with your hand. And the Gemara is mesupik. If you're allowed to make a kli for chafina, there's no raya from our Mishnah that it says the lashon v'kach hoysa midasa. In other words, you can make a kli. If you want to make a kli, you can make a kli. Maybe the pshat in the Mishnah is that you have to make an additional chafina. You do one in the beginning and then one in the Kodesh HaKodashim. Or the pshat is that you have to make the exact size as your chafino, not more and not less. When the Torah says meloi kumtzoi, it means that the kmitza that you do shouldn't have any coming from any of the sides. Shouldn't be less than a kaimetz. Shouldn't do just a little bit and grab. It has to be a full hand. How do you do it? You stick your hand in sideways and grab. You close the 3 fingers. That's how people do it. When it comes to the kmitza on a machvas, which are baked and deep fried, marcheshas, that's one of the hardest things of the avodah. It's one of the 3 things the Gemara mentions as a very difficult avodah. Why? Because you have to take your pinky and cut the very tough dough and do it exact that not more, not less, stays within the 3 fingers, pinky and the thumb. And the 2 other very difficult things, as we mentioned before, the chafina, to go like this and to drop it into a bowl, into the spoon without dropping anything on the floor, and melika saif, to cut the neck of the bird with your finger. If part of the mincha goes between the fingers, so if it's on the inside of the hand, it has halacha of a kmitza, it's good. If it's on the outside, then it's halacha that it's not. But what about if it's smack in the middle, and the Gemara says that's a suffix, we're pushing it as a suffix, and you cannot be makter whatever remains in between the fingers first, because maybe they're the leftovers. And if any of the leftover becomes chaser between the kmitza and the aktara, you're not allowed to do the aktara. And if you're going to put it on the mizbech after you put the whole kmitza, you also can't do that. Why? Because if indeed it's part of the kmitza, you're not allowed to be makter after you already makter the kaimetz. So one possibility the Gemara says is you're going to make a tnai. You're going to be makter tnai. Say if it's a kaimetz, if it's part of the kmitza, okay, I'm putting it on the mizbech as a kmitza. And if not, I'm putting it in as wood, as fuel. According to Chachamim, who say that you're not allowed to make such a tnai, so you can only use a heavy kayin that has thick fingers and doesn't have any ear space between his fingers. And if so, everybody's going to agree that that's what we have to use, kohanim that have thicker fingers. The Gemara is mesupek if the chafina is like kmitza when it comes to flour stuck between the fingers. The shaila is, the Torah says v'hevi, he brought it, it's okay. Or no, it says v'lakach. You can only bring what you took, and the Gemara remains b'teikum. If you did a kmitza or a chafina with the tips of your fingers, or you went inwards, you scooped it up this way instead of from the side, or you did chafina one hand and in the other hand, the Gemara remains in a suffix if that's a good chafina, and if these things are good for kmitza and chafina. Have a wonderful day.